Butter beans.
Yeah.
Butter beans.
That's also a trademark. Rolling in the deep. Shit. Go ahead.
We're gonna flick the bean to this week's magazine.
All right.
There we go. Not trademarked.
No.
Hate thinking on my feet like that. Welcome to the Comic Verse. I'm Oz, in case you had forgotten. Anyway, we're starting this off with Ablaze. This is Lovecraft Unknown Kadath #1. And if you're familiar with Lovecraftian mythology, as I love it personally, I love cosmic horror, eldritch horror.
All the racism, just
every bit of it.
Well, you know, it's like, don't ask my name in the group chat. But
No.
But yes, this
So sorry. In the background, one of our interns decided to
play the laugh
make sure
track.
that the sound's working on the video. Yeah, good job.
Either way, it is a fun book. It is a dark, mysterious read that reads like an H.P. Lovecraft classic with a much more modern take on the language, because Lovecraft, he can be a tongue twister. This kind of breaks it down in a much more digestible way. In the story, it opens on like a cosmic mystery that's slowly being unraveled as our main character travels to lands unknown. And I gotta say, I'm intrigued enough to keep reading this, so I'm definitely gonna add it to my pull list. But because it's such a new book, and I mean, like Lovecraft, I could get into it, but we'd be here for like a whole other 2 hours explaining Lovecraftian shit. And you don't have the time for that. I certainly don't have the time for that. So we're gonna move on. Which brings me to one of my actual favorite characters that I don't talk enough about. It's Vampirella Mind Warp. Now, this is a brand new book coming out of Dynamite, and it kicks off with we got writer Jeff Parker and Artemis Benjamin Dewey on this one. Now, the art, it's okay. The writing, it's a Vampirella book. Oftentimes, you buy a Vampirella book, you're buying it for, hot, sexy vampire girls.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case. It's got an intriguing story here. One, you get that terrible we cover up women, costume, even though the original costume was actually created by a feminist artist, but whatever.
Sure was.
That's a fact. Look it up. She does eventually end, and the book ends on this really interesting note, because it says the next issue takes place in 1969. So apparently we're going back.
My favorite year.
To when Vampirella was at her best.
What do you like about that year?
Yeah, I think that I like that whether you have one number up or down, it's still pleasurable.
Oh, my mom was born in '69, so that's why I like it. So.
That makes it gross. Never mind.
Yeah.
I hate that number now.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite number. That's crazy.
Spider-Man #9 does Spider-Man shit. Woo! I'm joking. This book, it's actually a kind of a bit of a tie-in to the most recent Hellfire Gala event, and I'm not gonna lie, this issue bugged the absolute shit out of me, because if you remember,
Didn't you say the Hellfire Gala was like your favorite thing you've ever read?
Ever in your life.
All right, so I was covering X-Men titles at one point, and then if you notice, at some point I completely stopped talking about X-Men. Hellfire Gala was the event that happened last year that made me drop all X books aside from Wolverine. That's the only knowledge I have of X-Men currently comes from the solo Wolverine title.
Wow.
So far, there's nothing worth a damn talking about, but this has so much to do with that because that stupid gala that they decided to make an annual event. And I'm hoping that after this current Axe Judgment that's going on right now, it's this big event. It's a crossover between the Avengers, the X-Men, and Eternals.
I got you.
For some reason, two of these teams that no one reads are fighting the X-Men. So I'm hoping that after we're done with this era and someone else can write and take over, because the Teeny Howard, Jerry Dugan team on X-Men is absolute trash. They piggybacked. You already know how I feel about the last X-Men run. It's supposed to be a Jonathan Hickman book. Everyone decided to piggyback on the name. The man didn't have a book. So he just put his name on the books that they put out, and then when it was time to go, he took his paycheck and left. Dude is over at Substack making his money now. Thing is, I don't do Substack because that's digital only. I prefer a physical medium if I'm collecting and reading books. But needless to say, this has a lot to do with the Hellfire Gala, which I don't give two shits about. This is all about Spider-Man trying to rescue Mary Jane, who for some reason Moira McTaggart has decided to try and kidnap her in order to get the consciousness to her, because all of a sudden Moira McTaggart's now in Danger's body, which I think I covered in the 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine mini story. Needless to say, a bunch of convoluted shit. Spider-Man saves the day, no shit. And then Mary Jane still doesn't want to talk to him, which pisses me off, because after the brilliant Nick Spencer run in which he undid that terrible ass comic Spider-Man One More Day, if you remember that.
Yep.
That was where Mephisto promised Spider-Man that he would save his Aunt May if he gave up the marriage of Mary Jane. And that's only because at the time the editor-in-chief, Joe Quesada, hated the fact that Spider-Man was married. It aged the character up too much. They wanted to tell stories when he was young and free and independent. And it's like, keep in mind, there had already been a generation of readers who grew up with the character.
Who hurt him?
Huh?
Who hurt him?
I don't know, but either
Real
way,
books.
That was the decision they started to make. But at the end of the day, we also got a one hell of a run from Dan Slott, which brought us into Big Time Spider-Man, and then eventually into Superior Spider-Man. That great story where Doc Ock took over Peter Parker's body.
Right.
I know it's, if you never read it, it sounds like, what the fuck? That sounds stupid. It's actually a really great read. I highly recommend. But this book, I would have to say, you could probably pass this, skip straight to 10, where we get back to normal shit.
Right.
Hellfire Gala is ass.
Here.
Oh, well, that was abrupt.
Yeah, Hellfire Gala ruined a lot of, like, I was on board. I suffered through the Ten of Swords event. It was like, cool, you want to base something around, the tarot cards and tie in all the X books, fine. Then the Hellfire Gala happened, and it's like you're trying to tell me like these stories, but you got like these cliches of characters, and it's like, you do realize why the X-Men exists. It was a allegory for the civil rights movement. That you had Professor X, whose ideology aligned with that of Martin Luther King. Magneto, his stance was very much by any means necessary. Malcolm X. X-Men stories are already woke. You don't make it more woke by putting a black dude in a dress. Like, he's literally a guy. He's just in a dress. He's not trans or anything. He's just a dude. But hey, I'm a dude. I want to wear a dress. Cool. Do X-Men stuff. Fight, the people who are trying to kill you every day, instead of having dinners for 12 issues.
Wasn't that a huge
12
point
issues.
in Hollywood for a long time?
12 issues of a dinner.
Were they good dinners?
No,
Well, yeah.
nothing happened of any, like,
What was on the menu?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. I'm not fat or anything.
Was it
I just
bougie?
wanna know.
it was bougie.
Okay.
Would you eat
A lot
it?
of French stuff for some reason, for a bunch
Oh,
of
that's not enough food.
supposed to be making their own culture.
Never mind. It's not enough.
But the whole idea behind the clothing was that it was mutant fashion designed by mutants for mutants. So it was pretty much mutant FUBU.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Anyway.
For us, by us.
Yes.
Got it.
Surprising book to talk about. We haven't talked about in a while, and that's because it had been a little bit since the last issue had come out. I know you're probably like, where the fuck were we in Venom? And that was last issue was when Dylan managed, not Dylan, but Eddie managed to get into the consciousness of Bedlam as Bedlam was attacking his son. And you saw that Bedlam was hurting his son. And that's where that issue had left off, because you realize, holy shit, Bedlam is Eddie Brock. This is the issue that ties it all together. And I say, if you don't get any other issue, this is going to be a key issue in later years, because this kind of sets up everything that's going on. And it also hits at something I've been suspecting all along with this book, that Meridius, that interesting character that we met at the beginning of this, is Eddie Brock. This book, if you were to read the first issue of this title back to back with this issue, you would have a Fight Club moment. But it's like every version that you meet in this book, every symbiote that you met while in the garden at the end of time with Meridius,
Yeah.
each one is Eddie Brock at a different point in time.
Ah.
But they all run into each other. So, like in the very first issue where you had that one random symbiote that they were calling Finnegan, run up and try to tell Eddie Brock something, then Bedlam came out of nowhere and attacked him.
Right.
After that revelation, and Eddie Brock is, expelled back through time, he is the Finnegan symbiote.
Okay.
So they're all the same person. So Meridius has been plotting this because he is plotting a trajectory for Eddie Brock's life that leads him directly to him. And this is always happening. That's why all those symbiotes are there, because they're all the same person. It is mind trippy once you start connecting the pieces, because it was there all along. This is just the thing that pulls the wool from over your eyes. However, there are 7 paths when he showed him how time was laid out. That there's 7 pathways with a line that cuts straight through. That
right.
line is me.
Gotcha.
But we've only been introduced to 6. We've been introduced to Meridius, Eddie Brock himself, Troy, the other guy who's not important, and Bedlam. Well, that's 6. So the book ends with the 7th path, and that is the one that Eddie Brock is trying to figure out, and that has to be the outcome. Either way, this book just elevated itself. It was already an interesting read. I was kind of curious how they were going to balance it, because the first part of this series so far had been really Dylan heavy.
Yeah.
And the bigger mystery was always well, what the fuck is Eddie Brock doing? And now that we know, it's holy shit, that explains the reason why King the Conqueror has such a deep relationship with him, even though we don't know that yet.
Right.
But to King, y'all been talking for eons. So it kind of makes sense now. It's so it's all the same person. So the biggest enemy in the Venom book is Venom.
So it did make sense that he was in Far From Home.
Yeah, it's interesting. I gotta say, this is a strong recommend. I'm liking this book, and it's pretty big shoes to fill after Donny Cates' amazing run on the King in Black, because that was great.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect tie-in and, continuation of that storyline.
Yeah.
As to what happened after that, because obviously there are repercussions. And this is a fascinating way to deal with it. I would highly recommend Venom. Spider-Man, you can skip this, go straight to 10.
Skip it.
I mean, unless you're a completionist like me, then you're going to get it anyway. Vampirella, it's okay. I'm curious to see where it goes. I love Vampirella's art. They usually
boobies.
Pretty solid artists.
Lots of boobies.
And Lovecraft Unknown Kadath, I'm gonna give it a recommend, only because I'm biased. I love Lovecraftian shit. So Cosmic Horror is my jam. And if you like slow burn noir mysteries, then that's pretty much going to be Lovecraft Unknown Kadath for you. And that is the comic verse.